How to start making music using FL Studio, but this also generally works with any DAW. I get this question a lot. How do I start making music to post online? First, you need to get some form of software. While having a computer, tablet, or phone isn't actually 100% required, it's the most mainstream option and has the most programs to make it easy for you to make music. You will need to do some research on your own of what software you want to use to create music with. In the description, I've linked all the free programs that allow you to make music in some form. And I've linked all the mainstream paid softwares as well. If you know all the basics already, just skip this part of the video, but if you're completely new to making music, you'll want to watch this part. I'm going to be using some terms that beginners might not understand, so let me explain some of the terms really fast. A DAW, or DAW, stands for Digital Audio Workstation. Basically, this just means Music Workshop. A DAW holds all the tools to produce sound. That sound is put to a time grid so you can play sounds at specific times making music. Almost all DAWs use something called MIDI, which the easy way to think about MIDI is basically it's the way the computer knows what pitch and volume to play at a certain time. There's more to it than that, but that's the easy way of understanding MIDI. MIDI stands for Musical Instrument Digital Interface. Also, in these softwares, there are these main sub-programs that run inside the DAW called a plugin. A plugin comes from the older days of making music, when you would have to plug in physical or external hardware to get a desired effect of the sound being played. Like, for example, your guitar being plugged into a reverb pedal, and the reverb pedal being plugged into an amplifier. Plugins, for the most part, you can think of as effects and sometimes instruments. A VST is also another term that we're going to learn. This is more like an instrument that you can play with MIDI. VST stands for Virtual Studio Technology, and actually a VST is still a plugin. Yeah, I know it's confusing, but stay with me for a second. To summarize, plugin is a blanket term to refer to effects and instruments inside the DAW that you can use to create music. Also, if you hear me talking about samples, that's referring to when somebody either records or takes a sample of audio from somewhere else to use in their music. And depending on the sample, it can be called loops. Like, for example, a drum sample is likely a recorded rhythm of drums being played that can loop over and over. So these two things kind of go hand in hand, loop and sample. Now, with some of the terminology out of the way, the other thing you should figure out is how you want to make music. Some programs like Serato DJ, for example, are better at dealing with samples, while something like FL Studio is a lot better for writing EDM music. But just because one program excels at using samples more than the other, it doesn't mean you can't sample in other programs also. For example, I can write an entire orchestral piece using MIDI, or create some BoomBap using vintage samples from 1922 in France in FL Studio. I'm going to be using FL Studio to help you understand music production a lot easier, but you could use any other DAW of your choice. For any beginners getting into FL Studio, I think you should break it down into 6 main areas. We'll start from the top and work our way down. Generally, when you start in FL Studio, it should look something like this right here. At the very top, this is the toolbar. This has a lot of important navigation tools to mess with, but I'll go into each area in their own video separately so I don't make this video super long. On the left side is your browser. This is how FL Studio or other DAWs will communicate with files on your computer or device. This could look different on mobile devices, but it's the same principle everywhere. This is where the samples and audio files are referenced from your computer. You'll need to set up your own way of organizing files, that way you can keep your DAW clean in the future. Trust me, start the file management process right now. The channel rack. This is a drum sequencer that uses MIDI output and also is where your samples are held. And they are held in the channel rack so that the next area can reference the sound. You might be saying, well, this is a little confusing and convoluted for FL Studio to reference files from your computer to the browser, then from the browser to the channel rack, and then into the playlist. But the reason for this convolution is because FL Studio first started with only the channel rack being a drum sequencer. So instead of FL Studio building an entirely new reference system, they opted to make it feed audio into the next area. This gets easier to understand as you see it visually, and hopefully by the end of this video, you'll understand FL Studio's layout and flow much better. The piano roll is more like a hidden window, and you can access it by right-clicking on one of the audios in the channel rack or just somewhere in the channel rack, and then click on piano roll. This is where you would write out MIDI. And when you create MIDI in the channel rack, it becomes something called a pattern in FL Studio. Shown up here in the toolbar, this is the pattern selector. This is where you can drag out patterns into the playlist to start building out a song. The playlist is the area that you can think of as being your song. This is where you get to move audio blocks around and build your music out. This is for structuring and arranging music into a timeline. The playlist has 500 tracks, so you have plenty of space to use to lay out your track and move your blocks however you would like to. The mixer is modeled after real-world layouts of some mixing boards. This is the last stop for your audio. All audio in FL Studio flows into the mixer. This master channel is the final output for whatever audio you export. If I was to build a flowchart of how FL Studio's audio is passed along, it would look something kind of like this. The mixer is also where you would add plugins to add effects or to change the sound of your audio coming out of the mixer when they are assigned to a specific insert. All of these areas I will do a specific video on so you can understand FL Studio better. FL Studio can be really simple once you understand how it flows, and in my opinion, this makes FL Studio incredibly strong and very versatile. If you want to be a part of future beat battles and download some free samples, or perhaps collaborate with other artists, or you just want help learning about music production, well, have I got the place for you. Come join my Discord server. We've got it all: memes, actual help, tracks being shared, ideas everywhere, like literally all over the place, and music connections that could help further your music career. In all seriousness, I made this Discord server to actually help the music producers of my community. The Discord server is to help you start off your music career and share my knowledge I've gained over the last 8 years of music production and publishing. So if you like this content, please like and subscribe to keep in the know and get more information and fun content later down the road. I'm SoundNinja. You've been awesome. Thanks for watching.